Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the very last remote Agile London of 2020. Don't worry, it's not going to be the last ever. We will be back, but it is the last one of 2020. Couple of things to start off. Firstly, quick house rules. Can I please ask that you all remain on mute throughout the session? And I actively encourage questions, but please just put them into the chat privately and I will ask them to our speaker for this evening. So, unfortunately, Andy Hiles joined the call and then had a leak and has had to leave the session. So he won't be speaking tonight. I'm sorry to anyone who was looking forward to speaking to Andy, but he was massively apologetic and we are going to book him in for the new year. However, we do have Laura Peakall speaking tonight from OVO Energy. This is her first talk with Agile London. So lots of positive, nice support for Laura would be most welcome. So she's going to be speaking with us this evening. And then after that, I'm happy to sort of open it up to a bit of a collaborative session. If people want to raise their hand and sort of do any talk that they might want to say, we could probably time box a short amount of time so a few people can speak. I will answer any questions about the world of recruitment if you want me to, but Laura will also be happy to answer any questions about what she's up to at the moment and what she's doing at OVO, because it all sounds very, very interesting. So I'm going to hand over to Laura. We've already done an audio and tech check, so that sounds great. Her talk this evening, as I say, she's People Transformation Partner at OVO Energy. Her talk this evening is co-creating our employee experiences. So Laura, I'm going to hand over to you. Off you go.
Thanks, Alex. And hi, everyone. I'll just start sharing my slides and then I'll be with you. Bear with me 2 seconds. As I said, we did practice this, so hopefully we'll be all right here. Alex, can you see my slides? Awesome. Well, thank you so much for everyone dialing in, and it's a real shame that Andy can't be with us, but hopefully I won't disappoint, so I'll try my best. So thanks to Alex and Oliver Bernard for having me speak tonight, and for the next 10 to 15 minutes I would love to talk about co-creating our employee experiences, which is a bit of a mouthful, so I won't say it again. And before I do so, I'll just very quickly introduce myself, as I'm sure none of you probably have a clue who I am, because this is actually my first proper speaking outside of work, so please bear with me, but hopefully you won't notice that anyway. So I'm Laura Peakall. Before joining OVO, where I currently work, I had a background in recruitment like Alex, in a mixture of agencies and then a huge organisation in Sky, then a tiny startup Athena, and then more recently OVO, where I joined initially in the recruitment team, and as Alex said, more recently moved into the people transformation space. So for anyone that doesn't know who OVO are, essentially we're a collection of energy tech companies. So that includes OVO Energy, SSE Energy, who we acquired earlier this year, and lots of other tech products around electric vehicles, smart home tech, and lots more. So as I said, I'm a newbie speaker. I'm a former recruiter and I'm currently a people transformation partner at OVO. And what that means essentially is that I get to lead on some of our big employee experience change programs. So I try to challenge us to be really progressive, have an agile mindset, come together to collaboratively solve problems, and lots more. And the LinkedIn icon in the corner is probably the easiest way to find me. So if anyone's interested in connecting with me after today, continuing the conversation, the easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. Luckily, I have quite an unusual surname, so I'm very easy to find on there. So co-creation then, that's enough about me. When I was preparing for this talk, I thought, let's Google co-creation. And I found this Wikipedia definition, which is co-creation refers to a design process in which input from consumers plays a central role from beginning to end. And I quite like this definition. And essentially for me, it's about coming together with your customers to solve problems together. And for us in the people team, or maybe if you're a leader in your organization, your customers are your employees, essentially, your people, your colleagues, your employees. So before I talk about co-creation with employees, I just wanted us to step back a little bit and think about how it's already being done in tech and has been done this way for a long time. And I know the audience of this meetup is very well versed in tech and product and how these teams work. So I won't teach you how to suck eggs, but I've never been in a tech team myself. But what I'm trying to show here is that tech teams have been working in this way for ages. So call it co-creation, call it user research, call it design thinking. They're all broadly the same thing. So it's about working with your customers every step of the way with those constant feedback loops to validate that you're building the right thing, right? So for a tech team working on a new app or feature, the cycle might look something like what's on the screen. So kind of working every step of the way with your customers to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Are you creating something that's going to be valuable for them? And you've got those checkpoints to make sure that it is valuable at every step of the way. So why do teams work this way? It's because it increases customer engagement. You reduce the risks of wasting time and money on things that your customers just don't want or need. And your product teams are happier, because they get more accomplishment. They're actually building things that ultimately the customers are going to hopefully love. And when I was preparing for this talk, I was trying to think of examples of companies, that do this really well. And to me, the most obvious example in my life was Deliveroo Insiders, which I don't know what that says about me, but I do order a lot of Deliveroos. I live in London, I live on my own, and I'm not a great cook. So I love Deliveroo. I've been a big fan of the Deliveroo app for a while. So I got invited to be part of the Deliveroo Insiders network. Essentially what I think that it is that they've asked a series of their customers to input into what they like about the product, what they don't. And I think it's a really great example of co-creation, because it makes me feel really valued as a customer, that I'm helping to create the future of the app. They're asking me what I like about the product, what I don't, how can we make it better? And that makes me feel really valued as a customer. And ultimately, it makes me a more loyal customer. I've stopped using the other competitors as much, because Deliveroo make me feel really valued, and I think the app's great. So I think that's a really nice example of co-creation with your customer. So we've talked about co-creation with consumer products, but how might we apply that to thinking internally for our employees? And really, those same principles that we just talked about for those tech products apply for our employee experiences too. It's really kind of exactly the same. So why do it? It's because we want to come together to co-create our employee experiences, develop products that our people want and need, collaborate on ideas, boost transparency, save time and money, and morale will be higher. And actually, in the people team, we're in this really unique and amazing position when we're working on employee experiences, because we know so much about our employees, right? Because we know who they are, we have loads of data on them, they're accessible to us. So normally in a normal life, maybe you can go up and tap them on the shoulder in the office, but certainly at the moment you can send them an IM potentially. So we should be leveraging that opportunity to co-create the most valuable experiences together, right? And ultimately hope to have those more happy, engaged and retained employees. So to me, this makes a lot of sense. So before I talk through some examples of what co-creation is, I thought it might be helpful if we talk about some examples of what it's not, because I think particularly in my industry and the people team, there's a bit of a misunderstanding about what co-creation is, and I just like to kind of challenge our thinking a little bit here. So if I take each one in turn, so we've got a final test before we release a product. And I'm not saying, so if you've already created a product, run it past your employees. I'm not saying don't do this, but I'm saying that this is not genuine co-creation, because you should be starting way, way earlier before you even get into the point of deciding whether to do that project, that product. You need to validate that it's going to be useful for your employees. So don't not do that, but that's not what I would call co-creation. And the same for the second point, right? It's too late. We haven't genuinely co-created there. We need to be working with them from the start and throughout to validate, should we start, should we continue, great. And assuming our professional expertise is better than the lived experience of our employees, I think this is a really true one of typical kind of people team HR functions. Because if you're an L&D professional, for example, a learning and development professional, and you've been doing that job for 20 years, of course, it's natural for us to assume that we know more than our employees and that we know what other companies are doing, we know how it should work, right? But actually, it's challenging that thinking a little bit. And actually, I think the wealth of experience that someone with 20 years experience in L&D can bring is to help employees, when co-creating, discover the art of the possible, if that makes sense. I think that's the slight tweak I would say could make a really big difference there. And then finally, assuming what other best companies are doing will be right for us. Again, it may be amazing that Google have scrapped ratings in performance reviews, whatever else that they're doing, and that might be a really good idea for your company, but let's not assume it is. Again, let's validate what's right for your culture, what's most valuable for you to be working on that time, and let's really co-create with our employees before just getting distracted by the idea that everyone else is doing it, so we should be. Hopefully that makes sense. So really, a bit of a cheesy slide, but for me, co-creation is all about having employees at the heart of everything that you do. A bit like how you'd expect tech teams to work with their customer, right? It's about working together with them to design solutions. We really want our employees to feel like they own their experiences. To me, that's really powerful. And I think people sometimes get stuck on where to start. And I would say, don't get too hung up on being perfect. It's just about starting, just getting out there and talking to people in your organization. So if you're a leader, maybe you can talk to the people in your own organization. If you're in the people team or in that kind of space, you might have a wider group to talk to. So it might mean you have to operate in different ways, because if you're a leader with a small team, you could co-create quite easily with all your team. And the same applies for a startup, right? If you work in a really small startup, you can probably talk to every employee, whether that be on a workshop call like this, whether it be on Slack, much more easily. But if you're working in a really big organization, so OVO, we're about 7,000 staff, for example, we can't possibly co-create with everyone on everything. So you might use kind of smaller pulse surveys on certain things, but actually, if you can just get out there and talk to a diverse and large group of people, I think that's a great start. And for me, it's about going to them with kind of open-ended questions, some examples of which you can see on the screen. I'm not going to read them out one by one, but essentially, just start talking, ask good open-ended questions, and I think that can make a huge difference. And just on this one, I think for us in the people team, you might use, we're gifted with so much data, right? And that comes from lots of sources, one of which we use Peakall, which is our engagement survey provider, which is great. And that gives you loads of examples of what's going on in your organization, scores on kind of reward, manager support, lots of great stuff. But the problem with using only data like that and not getting out and truly co-creating with that more qualitative feedback is that actually you can quite easily assume the wrong thing. So for example, let's say your Peakall results come out and your score for accomplishment in your team is really low. So you might come up with a great idea that everyone needs more recognition. So you start doing recognition in your town halls or in other ways. And that might help and people might like that. But was that the valuable thing that people were actually asking for or not? Maybe not. So because actually if you got out and spoke to people and got that qualitative feedback, co-created, understanding the problem together, maybe it wasn't the fact that they wanted more recognition, maybe it could be the fact that they were too busy. So they didn't have the time to reflect on what they'd done and really feel that sense of accomplishment because they were always moving on to that next thing. So it might be a different problem that you're trying to solve. And hopefully that makes sense. So final slide from me then is I would love to tell you a story of how we've been testing co-creation here at OVO, and it's been a huge learning curve for me. So the latest product we've just released internally is called My Performance, which is essentially our new product for performance management and goals. So we had this hypothesis that we needed to work on our performance approach for two main reasons. One was because back last year, OVO acquired SSE Energy. who are a much larger organisation than us. And as you can imagine, we had one way of managing performance. They had something really different. So we thought it made sense to think about how we integrate those approaches. So we had that as a hypothesis. We also had another hypothesis, was that from Peakall on both sides, so SSE used it, so did we, our scores related to performance and reward were really low. But rather than just assuming that we should go and do something, actually, we wanted to get out there and start talking to our people about their experience of performance, what they like, what they didn't like, were they having really meaningful development conversations, how enjoyable was the process, did it feel clunky, and so on. And obviously this is a huge piece of work, but what we found was that it was going to be really something valuable for us to work on. Our people told us that it was one of the most critical things as a people team that we could be working on, because they wanted to have clear goals, meaningful conversations, and above everything, they wanted it to be fair. They actually wanted to feel integrated, and they wanted to be measured in the same way as those new teammates, bringing together that SSE and OVO teammates together. And so without going into too much detail, we've kind of, for the last 6 months or so, we've been co-creating with different people across the business at different levels, different demographics, offices, etc. And we've just launched our major first iteration of My Performance. And one example I'll just give you quickly around co-creation that I really like is that is around ratings. So in the people team, we had this hypothesis that we wanted to scrap ratings, because that's what other progressive companies were doing, because we didn't want to box people in. But actually, we ended up keeping ratings. We changed them slightly, but actually we kept them in because that's what our employees asked us for. And that's because they weren't ready for ratings to be scrapped entirely. They wanted to take a more incremental approach. They wanted that scaffolding built in first to understand kind of, actually, let's get the basics right in other areas first. And so we kept them in. And I genuinely believe that if we hadn't have co-created, I think we would have scrapped them. And that, I now believe, would have been the wrong thing to do. So I quite like that as a story. So finally then, what next? I think it's really important now that we look at the data to see how it's going, My Performance, but more importantly, we don't want to sit still. So let's get back out there and start asking our people about how is it working? How can we continue to work with you to make it really good? And because after all, it's really their product, they own it, and we should keep iterating it together as that kind of scaffolding builds, if you like. So that was me. Thanks so much for having me. I do hope that was helpful, and I hope you couldn't tell too much that I was and am nervous, but I'll hand back to Alex and here for any questions.
Laura, thank you very much. If you could just unshare your screen, perfect. Got to be honest, didn't pick up on any nerves whatsoever. I thought you were very, very clear and concise. I thought it was an excellent talk. So well done. Well done on your first one. And I bring more good news. Andy Hiles has fixed his leak. I'll let him fill you in on what has happened, but he's back and ready to do his talk. So that's good news as well. Andy, I'm going to hand over to you now. Off
cool.
You go.
Cool. Let me just get this going. So I'm going to use a hello everybody. Yeah, I've moved into a house a couple of weeks ago, and it's a 1920s house with a 1950s plumbing. For those who are kind of like DIY enthusiasts, the whole plumbing system has zero copper in it. So it is all steel pipe. So you imagine over years where water meets steel, rust forms. Anyway, you can imagine what I've just discovered in the loft. However, a little kicker on that one, if you're going to repair steel, don't wrap electrical tape around it. Which is basically what I've just found in my loft. So I did what any aspiring DIY person would do, is I wrapped it in even more electrical tape, because clearly that actually probably has worked for the last 10 or 20 years. So, and then in the background, I've been pinging my mate who's electrician, who's going to reach out for some people, see whether we can get it sorted. But anyway, so leak sorted, a little bit stressed, but let's get going. So we're going to talk about performance mindset, and I'm going to use the kind of like the power of Zoom, and it's kind of like this is the first time I'm kind of doing the virtual background slide share thing, so it's going to be a bit of an experience. Let's see how it goes. I'd like everybody just to take a deep breath for a minute. And I probably need it, right? I need to take a deep breath and just like chill out a little bit. Right. So I want you to think, how many times oh God, I'm black on black. I didn't think this through. I need I need another top. Maybe I'll tuck a napkin in. Anyway, I'm just this headless figure. How many times have you said, I wouldn't make it, I'm scared, I've failed? And we do this all the time, consciously, unconsciously, when we're faced with challenges, when we're faced with kind of like stressful situations, when we're faced with uncertainty. This kind of like overriding thought process kicks in, right? It's fight or flight mode, brain science stuff. You know, it's kind of like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be able to do this. You know, I couldn't, I wouldn't, I could never. You know, and all those kind of negative thoughts kind of like kick in instantly. And this can happen like a personal level. I'm going to keep my hand in shot, otherwise I'm just ahead. A team level and an organizational level. And, you know, if you're running a business, you know, this comes in the fear of taking risks, you know, the fear of competition. You know, if you're looking at any kind of team things, it's, you know, even if you're facilitating teams or leading teams, it's kind of like, how do we take risks, but risks that everybody feels they can take together? And personally, right? So all those personal challenges that you wish you could have done, or you wish you wanted to do back in your life, you know, and we always have these kind of, again, these negative thoughts kick in, you know, instantly. So I want to propose something to you, you know, the what ifs, right? And have a think, right? What ifs? And we've probably all done it. We've probably all gone, you know, oh, what if I turn left and turn right? Isn't it sliding doors? Isn't that like the film with Gwyneth Paltrow? I think it was back in the days where, you know, it's like proposal of, you know, but what if, right? This is an actual shot from, you know, back when life was normal, probably about a year ago, when the Brecon Beacons got hit really hard with snow, me and a mate, and we took our dogs out. You know, and a lot of people would have looked at it and gone, oh no, it's too wet, too cold, too wet. Well, yeah, too wet, too cold. You know, I'd never be able to get up there, etc., etc. I want to just keep you in that mindset. What if? So who am I? My name's Andy Hiles. I run a company called Agile Rocks. I was quite proud of this bodge on the slide. Up until November, I was a professional Scrum trainer. Well, I still am, all right, but providing professional Scrum training to private and public clients, as well as doing the whole kind of coaching consulting thing. Back in November, I added ProKanban. Again, not on this subject, but go and genuinely have a look at ProKanban if you've never heard of it. It's kind of a new organization set up to look at professional Kanban. And then over the year, and this was already part of my kind of year goals, was to go and do a coaching kind of certification, right, qualification in personal coaching. So I achieved that back in September. I think it was September, October. I became a coactive personal coach. Some people call it life coaching. If I introduce people, I say I'm a personal coach, they think fitness. You know, as much as I would love to. So I talk about becoming a personal performance coach, and that's where we're kind of going on this little journey. So it's going to be just like a quick, like this presentation could take, you know, an hour to 2 days. I'm just going to fly through some of the concepts and let you make your own mind up. So this is a little dip into the performance mindset. Transformation. You know, we're in the world of Agile, right? It seems to have been the buzzword over the last year or so, you know, transformation. I have a big problem with this word, that a lot of people are using transformation as a switch, right? They're kind of going, you know, from A to B, we're going to, like, all of a sudden we're going to be this like hairy caterpillar, and all of a sudden we're going to be a beautiful butterfly, right? And they're using that as an end state. But in my mind, that journey just hasn't ended at the point you're a butterfly, right? It hasn't ended at the point you make that switch. You know, transformation is actually that kind of ongoing journey. It's that kind of, you know, learning organization that is kind of pushing harder and harder and harder. And, you know, even at a personal level or an organization or a team level, it is that kind of idea of shared performance mindset. Now, you look at any kind of professional unit, so military, police, you look at fire brigade, you look at rugby, football, they all have that shared performance mindset, this idea of the learning organization. But how many organizations and teams have you been in where they've talked about performance? You know, and if you're kind of a recreational footballer, or, you know, doing kind of recreational sports, yeah, I mean, that's there every time you go and play a game, every time you go and run that race, you know, every time you get together with your unit, it's all about shared performance, you know, and that mindset that goes along with it. So for me, it's not about transformation, it's about increasing and sustaining performance. This is kind of my take about how this kind of performance mindset comes in. So we're not looking at that kind of A/B switch. It's like, okay, we just want to get incrementally better. We just want to kind of keep tuning. We want to kind of recognize that, you know, there are these things that kind of float around, that kind of, I couldn't, I'll never be able to, and I can't. So this is a picture of me on one of the worst climbs, and it's a climb I've done, I don't know, hundreds of times. And it's a climb I've done at 3 o'clock in the morning, freezing cold on my own. There's no room for I can't. You know, when you're on your own remotely, you're on the side of a hill, and you still have 5 to 6 miles to go, and you've got a heavy pack on your back. There's no room for I can't. So we need to kind of recognize these automatic thoughts that kind of kick in, because we've got to deal with them, right? So if you're looking at your teams and you're working with teams of people, and, you know, you're hearing these kind of like, I can'ts, I couldn'ts, I wouldn'ts, you know, how do we switch that round to the what ifs, right? So at the age of 41, I did something I thought I'd never achieve. Very briefly, this is obviously me at an RV at the top of a mountain. There's a race called the Fan Dance Race. It was kind of, what were we talking about, a year ago? I finally achieved this. So 24 kilometers, 35 pounds plus. So you're probably up at about 20 kilograms on your back, which is about 40 pounds ish, give or take. There's a cutoff of 4 hours. So it's part of the Joint Special Forces, and you go over, you effectively ascend 2,906 feet twice. Meters twice. Effectively, there's a 4-hour cutoff if you're doing Special Forces selection. And I'd done this race numerous times, and had come incredibly close several times over. And at the age of 41, which is like a year ago, I smashed it, absolutely smashed it. For whatever reason, the stars aligned, and my, you know, I was prepped, I was ready, and I did it. The trouble was, afterwards, I crashed. So I was looking at achieving the result. I wasn't looking at sustaining that performance. So we kind of go back to that transformation. Even though I got incredibly fit, actually afterwards, I kind of completely wore my body out achieving it. So we want to get into that kind of sustaining mode where, you know, we can push and peak, but actually we're relatively kind of level set in our fitness. And I'll think about it from your own perspective when you're you know, maybe your challenges in life is, you know, to be better parents, better, you know, go and run races, whatever that, you know, a great cook, you know, you want to have that kind of baseline. But if we look at, you know, how that translates into teams and organizations, you want to be able to kind of like push that button and say, yeah, we need to outperform ourselves right now. We need to push harder and harder. So we want to have this kind of like, you know, peaking, increasing performance. There's a quote I've heard time and time again, that something, this is a quote by a Special Forces guy, and I had to transform my slide deck this morning, and I lost the author, and I deeply apologize, and I will find it and credit him. But I've heard this said time and time again. Just remember, it's harder to keep than to get. And that's referencing, it's not just about that one achievement that you make. It's not just about that one amazing release. It's not just about overcoming that horrendous defect that killed your live service. It's actually sustaining that performance and keeping that there. You know, keeping those goals, those beliefs, those behaviors in your organizations, in your teams, and being able to tune and push them a little bit harder. So there's a few key things I want to dig into. And again, I'm kind of going to just briefly go over them. So vision, we all know about. Control and resilience, I'll go into a little bit, right? So vision and goals, we know a lot about vision and goals. Take for a second, whether you do that now or after this, I would really, really welcome you to have a think about what your vision is, right? We're going into a new year. I mean, this slide deck's perfect, right? We're going into a new year. What's your vision for next year? What does that look like for you, for your team, for your organization? Maybe you're running your own business. I don't know. But what's that vision look like? And we can make all the kind of, the COVID, off the cuff remarks, but it's deeper and stronger than that. Because what we need to understand is it's not just the what, it's the why are you trying to make that choice? Why are you trying to make that distinction and transformation? Because that's going to guide you. When I went into that race, I had two goals, right? I had two options. One was do the back-to-back, which you do there's a few options, but you do the day race and then a night race. And then the other one, if it was like the even better, if I can get my sub 4, right, that was going to be a big deal for me. So that it drove that why. It meant a lot to me to kind of push my performance that much harder. If I think about my business next year, where do I want to be? Well, I want to be excelling in delivering Kanban training and Scrum training and working with great organizations that want to do really, really cool things. But what I also want to do next year is to build some kick-ass teams, which I'll come back to. And it's something I've been incredibly passionate about for the last couple of years. It's building these kind of like kick-ass teams. So picture yourself achieving that goal. So have a think, in this, after this, write it down on a bit of paper would be amazing, to like capture it in a picture. What is your goal? Why are you doing it? What does it look like once you've achieved it? You'll be tired. You probably won't recognize it, but you will have achieved it. There was a beautiful thing that Eddie Jones said, I don't think it was the World Cup. It might have been the last Six Nations, and I do apologize to the rugby nuts in the audience. But he said something amazing on TV, and I had to write it down. And he said, "I want England to be the team the whole country stops to watch on TV." Now imagine that as your team goal, your team vision, like that piece that inspires your whole team. I mean, that for me is just amazing, right? I mean, that would get me buzzing. If I was part of that team, that would get me absolutely buzzing. And that's the kind of vision we need to be setting. I don't know whether he did any more with that goal, but I think that's just like, for me, that's fantastic. So if you've got a piece of paper like with you, write it down. Write it, draw your picture. What's your vision for next year? Potentially explain what it would mean to achieve that goal, or what it would mean to you to achieve that goal, and think about it from a team level. Create an exercise with your teams. Great facilitation. Get them to think about their vision for the next, release or next, month or whatever that looks like. Right, draw it on a picture. Do some kind of like facilitation stuff. Create a picture. So let's talk a little bit about control. A few things in here. We're not going to go into them all, but attitude, preparation, effort, and mindset. I mean, I probably don't need to go into these too much. What I will say is you're probably going to pick up some injuries. And I've injured myself in the same eye. Just don't ask, but I managed to do it twice in my training sessions leading up to the race a couple of years ago or last year. But just it's that kind of overcoming adversary, and you will pick up injuries, right? And within teams, there will be teams will go through that fluctuation of peak and trough through performance. But what I've been talking with teams a lot about at the moment, when I've been going in and helping teams kind of think about this kind of mindset and pushing their performance harder, is I keep coming back to, if everything around you is going completely nuts and hurting you, please work on the fact that you can trust each other. All right, because if the whole organization is against you, if you as a team, as a unit, can trust each other to go and execute on whatever task you've got to go and do, you can have a moan yourselves, right? And that's fine. Again, I could probably do another talk about kind of team cults and culture. I'm not necessarily kind of having teams against the organization, but it's that kind of like team performance mentality that we are working together to build that shared performance mindset so we can rely on each other. A friend of mine, and this will always stick with me, a friend of mine in the army, now left many years ago, he used to talk about some of the people in his platoon that he didn't necessarily like them, but when it came to executing the task, they worked together and got on with it, right? And that's probably the kind of the space we sometimes need to be in. So focus on what you can control, not on what you can't. I mean, that's probably been said a million times. But what I think I'd like you to do is actually write down or express what you can control. So we're now building this picture of, you've got your vision, but and your why statement, but now also starting to think about what you can control. Right? Please write down what you can't. Right? That's just as powerful. You know, all these things. You know, I can't control the fact that leak is probably going to happen again. I don't know when. I just got to keep an eye on it. Right, but actually I can control it by keeping a ladder right outside my door with some with some tape and God knows what else, you know. But when you're thinking about your visions and your goals and your teams, again, and if you haven't done this with teams, go and do it. Right, go and get them to elaborate on their sphere of control within their organization or the tasks they're executing. You know, go and actually make that visual, put it up on a board, or, you know, well, when we get into real life, I guess, put it on Miro up until then. Final one, resilience. So remember this, right? Oh, I need to move my head. I quit and I give up and I can't. Right. So there's a couple of thought patterns on this. One is saboteurs, and I really like the saboteur route. And again, I could do a whole nother talk on saboteurs, but the concept of a saboteur is, we've probably heard of, you know, imposter syndrome. I mean, I wrote something on LinkedIn this week around the tall poppy syndrome, which is like a different version of that. It's more about the culture of the country, you know, and people on social media. But, you know, an example of a saboteur would be, you know, restless, or, I don't know, hyperachiever, or something like that. That feed these automatic negative thoughts, these ants, these I can't, I quit, I couldn't possibly, I'll never be able to do it. Somewhere in you, and there are saboteurs that are built up through millions and millions of years, many years of your experiences, and they sit there, and you'll face some level of complexity or uncertainty, and one of those saboteurs will kick in. And the best thing you can do is catch it. And I have them all the time. I have a lot of I couldn'ts, I would nevers, I'm not good enoughs, and all those kind of things, right? It's just perfectly normal. The fun thing is, once you start to recognize it and you catch it, then you can start to say, oh, hang on, that's me either going into an I can't moment, or my saboteur, my, you know, I don't know, restless saboteur is kicking in and I need to go and do less, or whatever that looks like, right? So the best thing you can do is catch it, address it, refocus it. The way when I'm kind of out and about and I'm cutting through the hills, this is my favorite, right? When I'm really, really struggling, I'm on the side of that mountain, this is mine. Trying to readdress it into a positive affirmation, right? So this is my favorite. I can, I will, I must. There's some other great ones. Be the first to understand, the first to adapt, and the first to overcome. So the Royal Marines, I ought to get the blade in there. And then the unwritten Special Forces mantra, or where do I need to go? Avalanche endurance events, unrelenting pursuit of excellence. You know, they're kind of like, why am I here? What am I doing it for? What's going to keep me going? What's going to keep me motivated? You know, you're on that 5K run, that 10K run, that half marathon, whatever you're doing. Your team are dealing with some high priority issues. You know, you've got to keep them motivated. Your business is suffering because of COVID, right? What does that look like? What is unrelenting pursuit of excellence what does that look like for your organization? My other favorite, this is my dog, is there's a book, and again, I swore I would find it, and I gave it to my son, and it's a great book. It's a story of a guy, an American soldier, went out to Afghanistan and got really hit hard with post-traumatic stress when he was out there and he rescued a dog. And part of the story, he talks about this this concept that dogs have of relentless positivity. And if you have a dog, honestly, they are ridiculous. They're my dog is relentlessly positive to the point of being really annoying, but I love him, but he's so annoying. But you know, again, there's that kind of relentless positivity, is this positive affirmation, right? How can I be more like a dog, right? How can I be more like my dog? Pain in the backside. So some words of caution. Okay, just a couple, and then we're kind of on the back straight. Okay, so be careful of comparing yourself to others. I work with another trainer, and we're always talking about this kind of fear of missing out. And there seems to be a lot of this at the moment with kind of certification and all this kind of stuff, right? And you're looking at the next person, the next person, next person. And if you're constantly doing this, this is one of your saboteurs kicking in and saying, I'm not good enough, right? Other people are far better than me. Like, catch that straight away and think, do you know what? Actually, what have I achieved? Where am I? What have I got? What's good for me? What's great for me right now? Readdress it. Where am I going? What am I going to be doing? What's my vision? Why am I getting there? Not looking at other people. What's in it for me? The other thing I would say, you know, much like my injuries with my eyes, it's okay to have a bad day. You know, it's okay just to step that down a bit, right? So this kind of, none of this I'm saying is this relentless performance, you know, pushing, because you will burn out. You will absolutely burn out. Part of this talk was inspired by a really good friend who I have a picture at the back end of this slide deck, who burnt out. And I won't go more into it, but it was probably the most shocking thing I've seen for a long, long time. Somebody very, very close to me, completely burning out. So it's okay to have a bad day, and it's okay to step back. Okay, that's okay. Final one, I think, for this little bit: thoughts only have power if you believe them. So, and it's true of insults. It's true of people kind of saying, "Oh, you know, you smell," right? You know, actually, maybe you do, right? You can probably verify that. But you know, if people are thinking you're a particular way, you know, or you're thinking you're a particular way, they're only your thoughts, right? And you're believing them more than other people. There's that lovely bit about embarrassment, right? You will always remember the bits that you were embarrassed about the most. Nobody else will. All right, so you're there going, oh my God, when I was like 12, I, you know, did something really stupid, right? Like when, you know, I don't know, maybe it's my memory of a goldfish, but you're the only one believing that is a problem. So, okay, it's just, again, recognizing that in self. So have a think about your resilience statement. What keeps you resilient? You know, what's going to make you resilient? So my final last thoughts. So this is not a journey for the faint of heart, right? Looking at kind of performance and increasing and sustaining performance is not a journey for the faint of heart. And it's not a place where you can become a master in one session, right? Or a 2-day training course. dig. You will have to work hard. You will have to practice a lot, and you will fail. Okay, you really, really will fail, and that's okay. And you will fall down, and that's okay too, but you will get back up. So only you can decide what happens next for you in your journey, for you with your team, for you with your organization. And only you can make sure that achievement is met. It's only on you. So this is a picture of me at the end of the race. The last thing I want to leave you with for you, once you get there, achieve that thing, what are you going to do next? Right. So where are you going to take it? It's not just that one thing, you know, go back, think about that transformation. It's not just about that A/B switch. It's about that kind of, okay, I'm a little bit further on. Where am I going next? Okay, I'm just going to skip this. I want to get onto this as a final word. So I'm a member of this fitness group. It's elite outdoor fitness. Go and look it up. Weighted fitness, running around with Bergen's military style, led by an ex-SF guy. Really awesome, great group, really supportive. but I want to pick this out. So this happened, I wrote this talk pre-COVID. This was back kind of November, December last year. So it's kind of, I've been forming this for a little while. Keep an eye out for each other. My mum was a professional a cognitive behavioral therapist, family therapist, psychotherapist. Right at the start of COVID, she said, I don't know whether I'm going to go back to work. She had this real gut feel that it was going to be horrible for people. And so I talk a lot about this kind of personal performance and pushing yourself hard, push, push, push. And I talked about my mate who crashed, and I just want to paint a whole load of caution over this whole talk. Because if you recognize yourself going down, do take care. Do get that first aid for yourself. Step back, right? Take some time out. Take that breath. Call somebody. Speak up. There are lots and lots of places that will listen. This is a snapshot. So this community, this fitness community, full of people of all fitness levels. However, the mindset is we help each other. And once in a while, I'll read the thread through, and I'll pick up one of these, and it'll be somebody just having a bad time. And the best thing that happens, everyone jumps on it. Everyone says, look, give me a shout, we'll have a chat. Give me a shout, we'll have a chat. That's a very kind of overt way of looking at it. But if you're working with people right now, and we're heading to Christmas, reach out to people that you know, or people you haven't spoken to, or that person that you just don't know well enough, or you feel is just, they probably are the people you dislike the most are probably the people who are having the hardest time, because they're exerting that behavior in another way, right? Reach out to them, just check in. It's all my kind of last thing I'll leave this with, just check in. Last picture of me and my mate. So that's a blast in the performance mindset, thinking. Again, it's a topic we could just dig and dig and dig and dig, and it's really cool fun. As I said, I'm a personal performance coach. Reach out, right? So obviously I do charge, but if it's something you're interested in terms of looking at kind of like personal performance mindset, pushing yourself harder, whether that's in fitness, whether that's in life, or whether that's in business, or you're looking for your organization, you're looking for your team, take your team to be a kick-ass team, reach out, give me a shout. And that is my talk. And I have a question.
Andy, thank you very much.
No worries.
That was fantastic. A really, really inspiring talk. So glad you fixed it and managed to come back and join us. I actually think your talk intertwined very, very well with Laura's as well, about building these successful teams and sort of encouraging people and things like that. I thought that was excellent. Thank you. Some questions have come in to you both, so I'm going to go straight into them. Laura, I'll come to you first, as Andy has just spoken. Laura, what else does Laura plan to use, or what other agile techniques do you plan to use, Laura, for 2021?
Oh, good question. And actually, it's something at OVO we've been talking about as a people team, because I think people teams historically don't operate naturally in the most agile, transparent way. And I think we've been iteratively moving towards working in more cross-functional teams, but we've got a way to go, right? So what next? I think there's two things. For me personally, I think I am fascinated by Agile. I think I've naturally had a bit of an Agile mindset without knowing it for most of my life. And really it's the last 6 months where I've been delving into it more so. And I'm trying to influence that across OVO. What are we doing next? Good question. I think for us next is just about building the awareness of what Agile actually is. I think in the people team, there's this real misconception that it has to be stand-ups and sprints and whatever else. Even co-creations, that someone in the leadership team said to me the other day, well, if we're co-creating, we can't be agile. And I was like, no, that's not true. Actually, co-creation is a great way of being more agile. It's just about, you don't have to co-create for a year to get to start building on a product, for example. So I think actually for us, it's about building that mindset and an awareness and leadership buy-in initially, getting out there, talking to teams, understanding what it means for each of those teams. So I won't bang on about this too much, but in the people team, we have teams that are really operational on the ground, that have Jira tickets coming in that they have to solve. And then we have people that are more partnership based, that are working on these big transformational programs. So I think it looks different for each team, but I think for us at the moment, it's just purely about building the awareness and mindset. We're at an early stage and talking to people.
Thank you. Keep going. Andy, straight to you. So Femi has asked, I'll ask it on his behalf. How do you get the inspiration to set your next target?
Great one. Thank you, Femi. Do you know what I've learned? Maybe self-beaten into myself that I need to value myself and my ideas and not other people's. So we're all kind of susceptible and guilty of people pleasing. Hey, that's a saboteur, right? I talk about saboteurs. I ought to do a chat on saboteurs. It's brilliant, fascinating. But people pleasing is a great saboteur. That moment where somebody says, "Oh, can I have?" and you go, and I go, "Yeah, oh, fuck," and it hurts you personally, or it compromises something in you personally. I try very hard not to let things happen. So when I'm looking for where my targets lie, they've got to be within my kind of, so you can't really see my hands on my heart, right? They've got to be in my heart space, not my head, so that's where I drive a lot of my, is it going to make me happy? Is it going to be good for me and my family? Sorry, a slightly elongated answer. So when I do training, I have 3 rules. I have the Andy rules of life: is can you, should you, is it the right thing to do, right? And they're kind of driven from the heart. It's like, you can do anything in life, should you and is it the right thing are your kind of life choices, right? So great question. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Laura, straight to you again. This is from Lavanya. So in case the large and diverse profile of the employees involved co-creation reveals that one particular solution may not work throughout the organisation, what should be the approach to proceed further? Is it suggested to have custom-made solutions to help improve the experience in that scenario?
Potentially, yeah. I think it depends on the organisation and getting to know your people, right? I think when particularly in a large organisation, it'd be so easy for us to assume a blanket approach is going to work for everyone, and often it doesn't. So I think if we have any major product, like a performance management approach, for example, we should only be doing that if it's valuable in the first place. And actually, I think when you build on a product like that, it might be that everyone needs a valuable baseline, and that's for everyone, but actually in some areas they need more value and they're willing to build more on it, and actually you can go a bit further with it. I think that would be my answer in short, is sometimes about having the guide rails and allowing people then to pragmatically and valuably use that solution in the right way for each organisation, particularly if you're in a large organisation where you have very different pools of and different types of teams, if you like. Hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so the final question, this is coming for Andy. I know you've got to dip out at 7.
No, that's cool.
Let's time box this for 60 seconds if you can. How do you get the inspiration? Sorry, I've asked that one. When you fail or hit obstacles, what techniques would you suggest to help us get us back up on our feet?
Reframe your failure. Somebody said, what does it mean to fail? And for me, failing is not turning up, not showing up, not doing that thing you promised. So reframe that failure. And if you find yourself in the middle and disheartened, go back to your vision and why, right? And I had that emotive picture of the kid and the dad. That's a good why, right? Think it like my hands and my heart. So think about what's driving your heart, and kind of dig in there, and that really will set you true.
Perfect. Good answer. Thank you so much, everyone. Laura, Andy, your talks were honestly fantastic tonight. And I've privately, and there's been some public response on the chat. with some really, really positive feedback. Do reach out to Laura and Andy on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us this year as well throughout these sessions. You know, all of you joining these sessions have just been fantastic. You getting involved. I know a lot of you like my posts and things like that. It really does help. So just a massive thank you to everyone for 2020. I really, really do hope everyone has a great Christmas and New Year, and 2021 is better for all of us and everyone. So this is recorded and will be up on our YouTube channel. So be sure to check that out. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely evening, and I will see you all in 2021.